Today, I am talking about Sketch, which was the latest Regal mystery movie from Angel Studios. And this one took me by surprise. I'm getting ready to go on a live stream with Deleted and Corey, and I don't remember if Kyle's going to be joining us, but we're going to be talking about this film. However, I enjoyed it enough that I wanted to do a separate review to talk about it with you. Now, I know that Angel Studios can sometimes come with the expectation of overt religious messaging, but Sketch is not like that. Not everything that Angel Studios puts out is like that. Sound of Freedom was not so much like that, and neither is Sketch. It's more grounded, well, not counting the premise. The messaging is very grounded, it's very human, and it's refreshingly free of any sort of preachiness, not too heavy-handed with the emotional impact. I mean, you definitely are feeling it, but the way it's done is so effective that I really appreciate it. And, what we get from this, instead of something that's kind of overtly faith-based or anything like that, it's a touching story about a family working through the pain of losing the matriarch, kids losing their mother, husband losing his wife. So the premise is that, but also what happens is we start off being introduced to the father, the little girl, and the little boy. The little girl gets in trouble, or she has been getting in trouble because she is drawing some very disturbing imagery. She's getting teased by one of the kids in her class, and so she draws a violent picture of him being stabbed in the middle. Or like stabbed in his gut or whatever. So they talk about it with her, and it's definitely setting the stage for something is going on with this little girl. It's kind of scary because the very violent stuff that she is drawing, the stuff that she's thinking, and they have these conversations with her about it. And you're introduced to the kid that's kind of like a little turd to her, the one that she drew the violent picture of. And it shows the dynamic between her and her father, her and her brother. Eventually what happens is there's this pond that's like in the backyard or like through the woods behind their house. And something happens at this pond that causes her sketches, her violent sketches of these horrific monsters and stuff to come to life. And they have to figure out a way to deal with this situation. There were some moments of humor in here that was unexpected. Like I didn't expect it to be as laugh out loud funny. I laughed out loud a lot. The dialogue was funny. The way the kids acted their part was pretty funny. I mean, I knew it was going to be kind of like a kidsy movie, but I didn't really know how funny, but not super goofy funny it was going to be. It was also very touching for a kid's movie. I felt like the acting was pretty strong, especially from the kids. The little kid who was kind of the bully, it wasn't necessarily a bully, he just picked on her some, and he is brought into this adventure with the brother and sister. And that kid, I felt like he eventually stole the show because some of his lines were really funny and the looks on his face were just, I don't know, he made me laugh. And I just liked the dynamic between all three of the kids. I felt like they sold the emotional depth of the story, but at the same time, they were able to carry this comedy pretty well. There were also some quotes in here that I appreciated. One specifically was when the father's sister was talking to him, and they were talking about this situation with the little girl and how she was expressing the pain of losing her mother through these pictures that she would draw. And the sister said, the kid's aunt basically said, "Stop worrying so much about the girl who is drawing her pain and worry more about the boys who are ignoring theirs, because the father and the brother both were trying very hard to pretend like everything was okay when they were both hurting. They just were not showing it, and the little girl was expressing it in the only way that she knew how. Even though it seemed disturbing, it was something that was helpful to her in certain ways." And I felt like that quote, it hit me hard because I felt like it speaks to how often we fixate on visible pain or the visible pain that people are having because of a loss or whatever, while ignoring the invisible pain that can cause so much damage to people. The film's real strength is in how it explores grief. They use this child's story, a PG movie, to tackle these very serious and sad themes. And it reminded me of a conversation that I had with my boss, with Jeff. He had lost his father earlier this year, and I made some sort of comment about how, and I'm totally paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of how he probably wished he could just get through that pain and get that pain over with because it's so devastating. And he said something along the lines of, no, not really. You know, I want to feel the pain. I feel like it's a respectful way of remembering him, and I want to honor him in this way. Like I said, totally paraphrasing, but that was the gist of the conversation, and I never forgot that. And this movie reminded me a lot of that conversation, you know, the importance of working through this pain, working through how the loss of someone close to you affects you when they're gone forever, and how being able to embrace that pain can be something that we can welcome, can be something that we feel is necessary for us to get through, make it through on the other side. And that sometimes grief is the most honest and true and pure way that we can honor the people we've lost. And, you know, it's very deep stuff. And this movie handled it in such a tactful and touching way that I really appreciated how it was done. And this film is rated PG, as I've already mentioned, but I do want to give you guys a word of warning in case you're thinking of bringing very young children to it. There is some imagery that might be a bit intense for super young kids, like let's say 6, 7 and below, because some of these creatures, some of these scary things that come to life from her notebook, the way they are presented on screen is a bit intense. I mean, it almost verges into horror-ish territory, though it's not super blatantly horror and it's not blatantly bloody or anything like that. Just a word of warning. This is not something for all children. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I forgot. Something I completely forgot to mention in my video review was the visual effects. They were actually pretty good for a movie that probably didn't have a humongous budget. Given the fact that these were sketches come to life, you could give it some leeway in that it didn't look completely realistic or whatever, because they are literally supposed to be her sketches come to life. So I thought they did a really good job with that. I also liked the pacing. It's not a very long movie, and yet you have a really good handle on these characters and their dynamics with each other. It doesn't drag at any point. It also doesn't feel like it's sped up too much. So really enjoyed that. Another thing was the fact that this type of movie kind of harkens back to those 80s movies where kids are on these adventures, you know, like The Goonies, Silver Bullet, stuff like that. Maybe not quite as horror-filled as a movie like Silver Bullet, but I think you know what I mean when I reference that sort of thing. So yeah, it's just so much going for this film. Okay, you guys, back to the video. Anyway, I felt like Sketch is a small, quiet little film. Don't know how well it's going to do, but I would like to encourage you guys to check it out. It was pretty emotional, and it was funny and surprisingly layered for the type of film that it is. And I feel like it's, you know, if you're looking for a story about healing and connection and how to process loss, that it's something worth seeing. And I appreciated it enough that I wanted to talk about it with you guys. So that's all I have to say for now about Sketch. If you end up checking it out, let me know what you think. Okay, that's it for this one. Nos vemos.